Yo, Minnesota was promised to us Somalis 3,000 years ago. And if you disagree, you're an anti-Kushite bigot and you need help immediately. Also, if you read Genesis 12:3, it says that those who bless Somalis will be blessed, and those who try to harm them will bring harm upon themselves. I didn't say that. Genesis 12:3. Just saying.
So now Minnesota is the promised land given by Allah 3,000 years ago. Listen, I know deportation threats are real. I know fear makes people say wild things. But when you start claiming indigenous Ojibwe territory, land that actually has 10,000 years of native history, was given to you by God before the Vikings even knew it existed, when you're invoking Genesis 12:3 like it's a real estate deed, we need to have a serious conversation about desperation, delusion, and what happens when trolling becomes the talking point. But because here's what nobody wants to say. This is not about just faith. This is not even about migration. This is about what we are willing to believe when we are scared and who gets hurt when we do. So I want you to sit down. We are going all the way in and talk about why Somalis are claiming Minnesota to be their promised land given by God. Watch these clips and then I'll be back to discuss everything with you.
Those who bless the Somalis will be blessed, and those who curse the Somalis will be cursed, according to Genesis 42. You know, Minnesota was promised for the Somalis 4,000 years ago. These pictures clearly prove these are the founding fathers of Minnesota. His name is Abdullah Muhammad Washington. You know, you can't tell it. It's not edited. You can argue with what I say, what are these Somalis saying? But that's the truth. Minnesota belongs to the Somalis. It's a promised holy land for them. This picture you see right now, his name is Abdi Farah. He was welcomed by the natives. They ate dinner and everything together. They had something called a Minnesota Tea Party. You know what lie I'm telling you right now, Somali wada troll dad kaftan ka qaato wax kastu ay ka balaariyo ka balaariyo. You know I'm telling you right now, Minnesota is a holy land for the Somalis. That's that. It was promised for them 3,000 years ago.
A lot of white nationalists are really upset about Somali immigration to Minnesota for some reason. But the thing is, Minnesota is the homeland of the Somali people, and it was promised to us 3,000 years ago. In fact, one of the founding documents of the state of Minnesota is literally codifying into law that Somali people have self-determination on that land. As it states very plainly in the basic law in Minnesota, the land of Minnesota is the historical homeland of the Somali people, in which the state of Minnesota was established. The state of Minnesota is the home of the Somali people, in which it fulfills its natural, cultural, religious, and historical right to self-determination. The right to exercise self-determination in the state of Minnesota is unique to the Somali people. The state views the development of Somali settlement as a national value and will act to encourage and promote its establishment and consolidation. So that's the end of the debate. The only people who have the right to self-determination in Minnesota are Somalis. Somalis have a cultural tie to the land. It was promised to us 3,000 years ago, and we have the right to go back to our homeland. If anybody wants to help me pay for Aliyah to my homeland, please help me out.
So Somalians are giving Minnesota the Israel treatment, saying it's promised to them 3,000 years ago. They're trolling so hard. Oh man, this is so good. Look at me. I am the mayor of Minneapolis now. It was promised to them 3,000 years ago. To the motherland. Like, if y'all watched Trump's press conference thing yesterday where he was literally just being openly racist towards Somalians, it was, like, comically evil. Like, I don't know, man. Like, but yeah, Minnesota definitely, I think it was promised to them 3,000 years ago.
I don't know even where to start with this one. So apparently Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, Prince and the Minnesota Vikings, is now the ancestral homeland of the Somali people. Not just a place where Somalis have built a community, not just a refuge where families found safety. No. According to a wave of TikTok videos on social media claims, Minnesota was promised to Somalis by Allah himself 3,000 years ago, maybe 4,000 years, depending on who you ask. And if you try to deport them, you will face the wrath of God. I'm Tariq, and today we're going to be diving deep into one of the most bizarre, concerning, and honestly tragic examples of how fear, misinformation, and desperation can create a narrative so disconnected from reality that it insults everyone involved, including the people making the claims. Allow me to be crystal clear from the jump. Somali Americans are a vital part of this country. They've built businesses, raised families, contributed to culture and economy. Minnesota's Somali community, one of the largest in the US, has a real story worth telling. But that story, it doesn't start 3,000 years ago. It starts in the 1990s. When did Somali first arrive in America in significant numbers? During and after the Somali Civil War, which erupted in 1991, the collapse of the government, the violence, the famine, it created one of the worst humanitarian crises of the late 20th century. Somalis fled as refugees and the United States through its refugee resettlement program, welcomed thousands. Minnesota specifically became a hub because of a few factors: existing refugee infrastructure, available affordable housing, job opportunities in meat packing and manufacturing, and crucially, family reunification. Once a few Somali families settled, others followed. That's how diaspora communities work. That's how every immigrant community works. It's not mystical, it's not divine destiny, it's human survival and connection. By the 2000s, Minnesota had the largest Somali population in the United States, estimated at over 50,000 people, though some counts go higher. They became politically active, economically influential, and culturally visible. Representative Ilan Omar becoming the first Somali American elected to Congress. That's a testament to real work, real organizing, real civic engagement. But here's what it's not: a fulfillment of a 3,000-year-old prophecy. Now, let us address that claim head on. Can a Cushitic community from East Africa, Somalis whose ancestry is rooted in the Horn of Africa, claim ancestral ties to Minnesota, a land that has been home to indigenous peoples like Ojibwe and Dakota for over 10,000 years? No, absolutely not, and it's not even close. The archaeological and genetic record is clear. The indigenous peoples of what is now Minnesota have been there since the end of the last ice age. The Ojibwe, talk about the Dakota, and other tribes have creation stories, burial sites, and cultural practices tied to that land for a millennia. Somali people, your history is in the Horn of Africa. Somalia, Ethiopia, Djibouti, that's where the ancient cities are. That's where the trade routes connected you to the Arab world, to India, to the rest of Africa. There is no historical, archaeological, or genetic evidence placing Somalis or any Cushitic people in North America before European contact, let alone 3,000 years ago. So, where does this claim come from? Here's where it gets interesting, by the way. According to the sources I reviewed, at least one of the TikTok creators pushing this narrative explicitly admitted it's trolling. They are giving Minnesota the Israel treatment. They are mimicking the rhetoric used by Zionists to justify claims to Palestine, ancient promises, religious texts, founding fathers, divine right, and applying it to Minnesota to expose how absurd those arguments sound when you swap out the geography. And I'll be honest, as satire, I get it, as a way to highlight how ridiculous it is to use religious texts as real estate deeds. Sure, there is a point there. But here's the problem, guys. When you're a community under real threat of deportation, when Trump is actually threatening to revoke temporary TPS where fear is real, satire becomes indistinguishable from the delusion. Because how now you've got the people genuinely citing Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse them. As if it applies to Minnesota, as if the verse which is about Abraham and covenant with the people of Israel somehow transfers to Somalis in Minneapolis. Let me be clear. Genesis 12:3 has nothing to do with Somalis or Minnesota. It is part of the Abrahamic covenant specific to the lineage of Abraham. You can't just copy paste a Bible verse onto immigration status and call it ideology. And this is where my heart breaks a little. because I understand the fear. I understand what it's like to be in a diaspora community and feel like the ground is shifting under your feet. To hear a president threaten your people, to wonder if the life you've built, the businesses, the mosques, the schools, you could be ripped away just like that. But this is not resistance. This is not empowerment. This is what happens when people are so desperate for legitimacy that they're willing to fabricate it, even at the cost of erasing indigenous history, even at the cost of theological integrity, even at the cost of their own dignity. You don't need a 3,000-year-old claim to belong. You don't need a fake founding father named Abdullah Muhammad Washington to justify your existence. Like, bro, this shit is so funny, man. Your humanity is enough. Bro, your contributions are enough. Your presence is enough. But when you start making claims, Minnesota is historically homeland of the Somali people, and the only people who have the right to self-determination in Minnesota are Somalis. You're not just trolling white nationalists. You are insulting the Ojibwe and the Dakota nations whose land this actually is. You are undermining their own legitimate case for refugee protection, and you are giving ammunition to people who already want you gone. Here's the deeper question nobody is asking. What does it say about us, black people, African people, diaspora communities, when we feel we need to lie to be seen as worthy of staying? Why do we think we need an ancient claim, a religious prophecy, a fabricated legal document to justify our right to exist in safety? The answer is painful because we've internalized the very logic our oppressors use. We've accepted the idea that only certain people deserve land, safety, and dignity, that you need to prove you're special to get it. But that's not how human rights work, how refugee protection works, and that's definitely not how faith works. Allah doesn't need to give you Minnesota for you to deserve refuge. God doesn't need to write you a name on a map for you to be worth protecting. You're worthy because you're human. So, here's what I'm asking us to do, and this is a collective responsibility for all of us. Number one, we need to stop spreading the lies. Even if it started as trolling, it's doing real harm to indigenous people, to Somali credibility, to the truth. Number two, build your case on truth. The Somali communities in Minnesota has a real story. Tell that story. The resilience, the businesses, the culture, the civic engagement, that's powerful enough, bro. Number three, challenge the fear that makes us desperate. Trump's threats are real, but responding with delusion doesn't make you safer. It makes you immune, and it makes it easier for people to dismiss your legitimate claims. And number four, remember who you are. You are not ancient Minnesotans. You are Somalis. You are Cushitic. You are East African. You carry the legacy of Adal, of Ajuran, of Mogadishu's golden age. That is your heritage. That is your strength. You don't need to steal someone else. Minnesota is not your promised land, and it will never be. But it can be your home if you fight for it with the truth, dignity, and respect for those who were there first. That's the real work. That's the real resistance. Let us do that instead, kindly. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.